I've read hundreds of business books, and today I want to share my top 40 books that everyone interested in all things business needs to read. And I've got these clearly broken down into categories. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. The books that I'm going to share today are absolute gems if you are running your own business, if you're leading a team, or if you want to advance your career. They're not designed to be lectures, they're designed to be timeless knowledge that applies no matter what your industry and your role. We're going to be talking about everything from strategy to branding and marketing. The first category that I want to cover is startups and innovation. And if you follow this channel, the first book that I'm going to mention shouldn't come as a surprise, and that is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This is all about not working for money, but having your money work for you. The second book that I have in this category is The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, and that is all about creating and experimenting and constantly learning from your efforts to advance as much as possible. And the third book that I want to share in this category is Good to Great. That one is by Jim Collins, and this is all about the companies that make the leap and what separates them from those that don't. The second category, let's talk about strategy. One of my top picks for strategy is Your Next 5 Moves, which is by Patrick Bet-Davis. And this is all about learning to strategize like a grand chess master, thinking multiple moves ahead, which I really love that thinking of constantly trying to be forward thinking in a marketplace and to think ahead of the competition. The other book, which I absolutely love, which I talk about on this channel as well, is The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. And one of my top takeaways from this book was the idea of dominating, not competing. And I have another episode on this if you want to learn more about what that means. The third recommendation that I have in the strategy space, again, one of the top ones that I love to talk about on this channel, is The 12-Week Year. So that one is by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. And this is really about a complete paradigm shift in the way that you perceive time. So completely rethinking your idea of time so that you can do more in 12 weeks than most people can do in 12 months. The fourth recommendation that I have in this category as well is The Unfair Advantage by Ash Ali and Hassan Kuba, another one that I love to recommend on this channel. This is all about discovering the things that give you that real competitive edge in the marketplace. And some of these things are likely to be things that you have potentially overlooked, and it uses a lot of really great case studies to explain how other people have leveraged their unfair advantage to achieve success. Okay, so third category that I want to cover off is marketing, sales, and social media. And I have a few recommendations in this space, probably more so than any of the other categories because there was just so much to choose from in this. And the first one is Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And the big takeaway from this is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The second one that I had is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and that is by Al Rice and Jack Trout. This is a classic, and it goes through the timeless principles of marketing. And what I really loved about it was that it talks about the principles of winning mind and market share in the long term in the marketplace. I really love the way that it breaks down the different laws to explain to you how that works and what you can do to strategize in that space. The third one, of course, we had to include something by Seth Godin, and this was one that I absolutely loved, Permission Marketing. And that is all about replacing this traditional idea of interruption marketing with permission marketing. That is marketing where you have actually gained the trust of your audience and you build your relationship based on that trust, as opposed to trying to constantly interrupt them in the marketplace. The next recommendation that I have in marketing, sales, and social media is Real Artists Don't Starve. And the reason why I put this into this category is because one of the key takeaways from this is really about appreciating the value and the worth that you have to offer the marketplace. So I thought for people that are potentially maybe struggling with how they position their services or their career expertise, or are struggling with that value that they bring to their brand, this can be a really good one to increase your confidence in that space. The other one that I had is, of course, Alex Hormozi's The $100 Million Offers book, and this is really about crafting irresistible offers that he describes as people feeling almost dumb if they don't say yes to it. They'll feel dumb saying no to the offers that he crafts, because he does it in such a brilliant way and it's really easy to follow, and just such practical advice in that one. The other book that I have is Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley, and this is all about creating demand that outpaces supply. The other book, I've got a couple by Austin Keelong. The first one is Still Like an Artist, and this is about actually embracing the art of imitation and the value in doing that. And this being an idea, of course, that a lot of people don't want to admit. Often we think that in the creative space, everyone is original, and he kind of has this opposing idea, which I feel is actually really interesting and really valuable. The other book from Austin Keelong, which I love to talk about as well, is Show Your Work. And this is all about not just promoting your products that you have to offer, or your service that you have to offer the marketplace, but actually inviting people along in your processes as well, showing them your work along the way and building your reputation through doing that. And the final one in the marketing, sales, and social media category is The Diary of a CEO. Now, this can cover business in general, and it does. It is 33 Laws for Business and Life, but it is written by someone who is an absolute marketing guru. So it just, for me, had to fall into this category. And what I really loved about this book in particular is the idea of filling your buckets in the right order and the law around that, which I've done another video on as well. This also leads into communication, and I've got two recommendations in this space. The first one is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Now, I absolutely swear by this framework, this 7-part framework that he breaks down for his story brand formula. This is about storytelling in a way that is actually designed so your customers hear your message. It's not designed to necessarily be about you, it's designed for your customers, so that the storytelling that you engage with is actually connecting to what it is that they need from you. I absolutely love this book, and I use it in some way every day in the writing and the communication that I do as well. So highly recommend that one too. The other one that I had in this space, which I loved, is the Bezos Blueprint. So that is by Carmine Gallo. And this is really about the secrets around the success of Jeff Bezos' communication, particularly during his leadership at Amazon. And it breaks down some really nice examples as to what he did to excel in this area, which I've found really valuable. They're really practical things and challenges some of the conventional thinking in the communication space. So category number 5 is mindset, and I have a few recommendations in this space. The first one is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is essentially about thinking that things are created on a mental plane before they are created on the physical plane. So I'll just leave it at that because that is a great book to read. So the next recommendation that I have in this space is The Science of Getting Rich, and that is by Wallace D. Wattle. So this also relates really nicely to Think and Grow Rich, and it is about how your thoughts can shape your financial success. And the other recommendation that I have in the mindset space is The Obstacle is the Way. And this really uses the Stoic principles to turn your challenges that you might be experiencing or maybe will experience into opportunities to discover what that is actually revealing to you. And finally, the last one that I have in the mindset category is The Art of Work, another one by Jeff Goins. And this is really about discovering your calling through meaningful work. And something that I really loved in this was embracing the art of painful practice. So that is about almost not listening to that advice that when you find what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life and that it will always feel easy, and that it actually should to some degree feel hard. That is how people master things. So I really loved that takeaway from the book. So the next category is motivation, and I had to put in something by Steven Pressfield because I love a few of his books related to the business or the professional development space. And the one that I've chosen is Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be. And this is all about overcoming resistance and the many guises that resistance can have, one of those being procrastination, for example. The next one for motivation, again, one that I absolutely love to recommend, is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And this is, if I were to summarize it, about being willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. And that when you do that on a daily basis, that is what is going to give you the edge over time in the long term. The next book that I want to recommend, this was a book that I absolutely loved reading. This was Limitless by Jim Quick, and this is all about unlocking the potential of your brain. But it is not just about learning things, which a lot of these books can be. This is about learning how to learn. So it gives you some really practical techniques about making the most of the abilities of your mind. So great one for motivation. The next one that I have in motivation is The Talent Code, and that is by Daniel Cole. And this is about talent being something that is grown, not something that is born. And my final recommendation in motivation is originals, and this is how nonconformists are the ones that drive change in business and culture. The next category that I want to move into is productivity and focus. And if you follow this channel, you know that I absolutely love all things productivity, focus, hacks, any ideas that anyone has in this space. So it was tough for me to narrow this category down. And the first one that I had to include in this category is Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. What really stood out to me in this book was the idea of when you first encounter information, it not being when you necessarily need that information. So you have to set up a knowledge management system that is going to allow you to capture that information so that your future self can then benefit. And he uses this really fantastic code formula to help you to create that personal knowledge management system. The next book that I want to recommend in the productivity and focus space is Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, and this is all about the big changes starting small, and by that I mean incredibly small. So the book is all about those absolute micro habits that can help you to achieve your goals. And leading on from that, of course, as well, Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is again all about how you can break down those habits that aren't necessarily those habits that you want, to replace them with the ones that you do. The other book that I want to recommend, I had to include something by Brian Tracy, of course, if we are talking productivity. And the one that I've chosen for him is Eat That Frog. And so that is all about overcoming procrastination. He shares tons of techniques to do this. But Eat That Frog, of course, is related to this idea of doing the hardest thing first so that you can tackle that task and get that out of the way to be able to move on to those other things. The next recommendation, of course, I had to include something by David Allen and the absolute classic Getting Things Done for the productivity and focus space is a must read. This is all about getting things out of your head and into a system. I read this book really early on in my career, and then I recently read it again, and it was something that really resonated with me to help me to overcome any sort of overwhelm that I was ever experiencing. It really helps you to identify how you can start to move things into a system. And what I loved was, I'm pretty sure that that actually inspired a lot of building a second brain, which actually helps you to really create that system as well. The next book that I have to mention, and the last book in this category, is Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. I was actually just talking about this book last night to my husband, so I love that this is on the list. So this is all about leveraging technology to your optimal advantage and no more. So it is not about not using technology, it is about making the most of it, but not actually letting it exploit you. So let's move in now to the next category, which is operations and systems. And I had to, of course, include the E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. This is all about not working in your business, but working on your business so that you are creating a system that can then run itself. And a lot of that same thinking flows into my next recommendation in this space. I've only got two in the operations and systems space that I think are absolute must reads, and that is The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. So this is all about how you can automate and outsource so that you can design a business that allows you to achieve success and profitability, but also have the lifestyle that you want to have as well, and to be able to actually do other things with your life outside of your work and your business. And the next category, we have to talk about leadership, whether you run your own business, whether you are looking after a team, or whether you just want to advance in your career. So the book that I have recommended in that space, I've got a few, but let's start with Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. So another one from him, of course. He is a thought leader massively in the leadership space. So anything by Simon Sinek is going to be a great read if you're interested in that space. Leaders Eat Last is all about how leaders build trust and loyalty through service. The next book that I recommend in this space is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. So this is a memoir from Nike's founder, and it's just a really nice story about how this brand went from zero to absolutely taking the world by storm. And the other book that I want to recommend, which even though it is a bestseller, I believe, I feel like it just does not get enough attention, and that is The Widow Cliquot. That is by Tila J. Marzio, and this is based on the woman who many centuries ago was the absolute driving force behind the Champagne Verve, and it tells her story from going from being a widow at a really young age to being one of the most successful women in the world. So it's a really interesting story, particularly for female leaders as well. And finally, in the leadership category, I have got the book by Mark McCormack, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. So this is all about real life lessons in business and in negotiation and street smarts that are just really practical compared to a lot of the academic advice that you might often receive. And finally, the last category, networking and relationships. I only have one recommendation in this space, but this is truly One of my favorite books. I absolutely loved reading this book because it was just so engaging, and it is an absolute classic. It is How to Talk to Anyone by Lel Lown. So this gives you 92 tips for connecting confidently and building rapport with people fast. And she just does it in such an entertaining way. And the way that she packages all of the different tips just make them so memorable as well. So I would highly recommend that one to finish off. So they are my top 40 books, and this was really hard to actually narrow this down to just 40. So if there is any that you would have recommended in your top 40, then let me know. I would love to hear which ones they are, and if they are ones that were on my nearly there list for these top 40 as well. And if there is ones on this list that you absolutely love as well, let me know. I would love to know what your favorites are that I have already mentioned. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.